now that we are familiar with how we can read data or enter data into an array and how to work with that array to do calculations, we're going to combine this with file reading and writing. And in this program we read data from a file. It's great because you don't have to type all the input. Over here we work with 12 offices, and imagine that you would have to type in 12 numbers every time you run the program. It's not feasible. Okay, so you just read it from the file, and over here we have sales data from 12 offices, and we store them in an array the size of 12. And just to be able to show you the code a little bit better, I'll just keep the sales.dat file on a separate tab as opposed to next to one another, because we're not going to write anything anyway, so you won't see any changes. But you see that there are 12 numbers here, and they all have 2 decimals. Okay, so once we have it loaded into the array, that array is in memory, and that makes it very easy to do all kinds of calculations with it. So what we see over here is that we use over here the fstream library to be able to use the file. We declare an input file stream data in. We're going to be using a constant size of 12. So let's put that outside again, as usual. Over here we use a loop counter called office, and then we have over here the sales array size of offices, num offices 12, and we have total sales, the average sales, the highest sales, and the lowest sales. Okay, so here we go. The first thing we want to make sure is that we can actually open up the data file. So over here we have the input file stream, and we open up the sales.dat data file over here in the same folder. And let's say that you made a typo, or it happens to be in a different folder, can't find it. So we have over here, if we're not successful over here, if this is not true, if it's 0, then we send this message, error opening data file. Let me show that. So I'm just going to make a little typo over here and run this, error opening data file. Now we go back to the proper name here. So now we go to the else, we can open it up. And we're going to fill the array with data from the file. Now this is a hard-coded one. We know how many sales figures are in the data file. So we just go with a normal counted loop over here. And over here we have our input file stream, and it takes another element and puts it into an element of the array. Now, quick recap: if we did not know exactly how much data was in the data file, would we still use a for loop, or would we use something else? And of course the answer is we would be using a while loop. So as long as we can put something from the data into that array, and we would probably have to combine that with the size of the array. As a brief look ahead, there is also a type of arrays that we call vectors, where it can grow and shrink seamlessly, and then we would not have to be concerned about going outside of the a vector, but over here we still work with the traditional arrays. Anyway, so for each of those offices we're going to get a data point from the file, and then we're going to close it again. Important, don't forget that. At this point we have loaded all the elements in the array, and in fact, you know, maybe it's not a bad idea to add that for cout data in the array, and then we'll just for auto sale in sales, should not cout. I don't use the range-based for loop a whole lot. I'm a little bit more traditional. Cout sales that would be sale, and give it a little space after it, and then over here we do just skipping a line. Yep. So let's see if that actually works. Okay, so over here, just as a little check over here what we have in the array, and I can just Control K, Control C, comment this out. Okay, so we have data in the array, we know that. And then we're going to run through all the elements over here. And we're going to start with a total sales of 0. And each time that we get to another data point, we just add that to the total sales. And at the end of this for loop, we have the total of all those office sales. That means that we can also calculate the average sales. We simply take the total sales and divide it by the number of the offices. Then we can run through the array again to find out what the highest, the maximum, and the lowest, the minimum are. And the way you do that is you just run straight through the array. You're going to say, hey, the highest sale that I found in the beginning is the very first element. And then I'm just going to run through the whole array, and then if the next element that I find is greater than what I have so far as the highest sale, then the new highest sale is the one that I have right now. So at the end it has picked up the highest. You do a similar thing for the lowest sale. You pick the first element in the array and you say, this is the lowest that I found. Then you're going to run through the whole array again, and then if the one that you find is less than the lowest sales, or the lowest sales is greater than what you find over here, then you swap them over here. You take the new value and you put it in lowest sales, because this is now the lowest that you found. And by the time that you get to the array, you found the absolute lowest as you picked it up along the way. Now notice that in the index we start counting at 1 over here, and we only go up to num offices not less than or equal. and you don't want to run this loop too many times, you already know what the element is in the first one, so you just check the index from the second one, and you go up to the number of offices in this case, but not including, otherwise you would try to go outside of that array again. So that's the reason that this one is starting at 1, because you have already looked here. Okay, and then we have run through the array, added everything up. We have taken that total sales, divided it by the number of offices. We've picked up the highest sales by beginning at the start of the array and then working our way up and seeing if we find even higher numbers. And for the lowest sale, we started at the beginning of the array, and then we picked up even lower values as we went along, and we just print this out. So here's the program again. And let's say that I add a number over here. I changed one of the numbers by 11 cents. So instead of 50, I'm just going to make this 0.61. And let's see how that affects the total sales here. And of course now you see that it goes from 689 to 700, so it works flawlessly.